meeting, but
Understood.
yes. Well, I thought it would be kind of fun to do like a little quiz to get us started, like an icebreaker, and it might be good as people still continue the meeting. Um, so Betsy is going to share this quiz. So there's a longer quiz on my blog. Um, but the quiz is, what kind of quarantine teacher are you? Okay, so quarantine teacher is just what I'm calling parents at home. So I'll walk you through the quiz. And if you want to put your answers in the chat, that's cool. If you don't, you just want to keep it to yourself, that's totally cool too. Okay, so the first question is, the alarm clock rings on Monday morning, and you, one, have already been up for an hour prepping the homeschool workspace with fresh paints for a new activity you planned from Pinterest. Or two, consult your outline for the week with a deep breath and even deeper mug of coffee. Or three, what alarm? Who sets an alarm when we don't need to be anywhere? All right, question number two. The math assignment for Tuesday is way over your head. The first thing you do is, one, open your Khan Academy app and consult. Two, look at the answers in the back of the textbook and try to work backwards. Or three, I don't do math. This pandemic is taking so many things away from my kids, and math is one of them. And our last question for this quiz. On Wednesday, you need to start the first book report of the year. The first thing you tell your kiddo is, what do you think? Does this book deserve 5 stars? These are the 3 points we're going to make in this report. That's number one. Two, I remember writing a book report, honey. This is going to be fun. Or three, have you read a book lately? All right, so the results, and this is just to gauge where we're at. Everybody's at different places. So if you have mostly ones, congratulations, you're a quarantine teacher master. It sounds like you're set up for a great year, and you've got a lot of good strategies already. Two, quarantine teacher in training. You've got some idea of how to put this together. You're probably drawing on your own experience in education and what you learned in school, which is like the best reference point. And you're just trying to like piece it together. And if you had mostly threes, we're going to call that quarantine teacher rogue entry level. And that is great too, because everybody has to start somewhere. Teachers started somewhere. And it's a great thing that you're here today, because I can get you started. Next slide, please. This lecture is preparing for distance learning, the first 5 steps to take for a successful year of learning at home. Slide, please. And first, before I say anything else, I really just want to say thank you to the Lincoln Park Zoo for having me, but also just for your mission, your conservation efforts, your science education, your youth programming, your focus on the environment. The work that the people at the zoo and their volunteers do is more important than ever to the city of Chicago and all the kids who are going to be distance learning this year. So thank you for the amazing opportunities for education that you're continually providing families. It's an asset at this time. Slide, please. So a little bit about me. Betsy kind of covered it. You can go to the next one. I've been a teacher. This is my 15th year. I've done in-person, virtual. I work with kids ages 12 months all the way to age 14. I have 2 boys. They're 7 and 10. They're a handful. I did teach them at home while I taught my students virtually. And I felt like one of my biggest jobs last spring was actually coaching parents. They were on all the Zoom calls. And so I got a lot of feedback during that time, and I had to put what I was doing into practice too. And so I started this blog, Quarantine Teacher Tara, and it's just a resource for parents because we're all in this together. And I'm a teacher, but I can teach you how to do it too. So next slide, please. Before I get started with my suggestions on how to start your school year off right for distance learning, I just want to acknowledge that I know so many parents are feeling like they're being asked to do the impossible by teaching their kids at home during this global pandemic, and I don't disagree. Professionally, you're probably being faced with a huge set of adjustments and expectations. And if you're like the majority of people out there right now, working from home and understanding new functions and systems of your job while working from home has not been without its challenges. And now you're being called upon to have a completely new set of professional skills in order to teach your kids at home too, who, by the way, are also struggling to understand new functions and systems of learning at home. And furthermore, as the challenge goes, there is the reality that teachers actually do have degrees in this stuff. They study a long time to know how to do what they do. And I often think of them as superheroes. Slide, please. They're able to get buy-in from kids. They know how to coax them to sit down and actually complete their work. They're able to foster creativity and curiosity, and they don't suffer through tantrums and whining all day. And they do it without the power of bribing of screen time. So I really find it important to acknowledge this challenge. But I'm here to help you understand that you can learn how to do what teachers have been trained to do too. Teachers begin their process months before kids go back to school, so a little planning is going to go a long way. So where to start? I'm going to give you today 5 actionable steps to help get your school year at home off right. Step 1. Oh, you can go ahead. Yeah. Step 1. The first step to a year of successful distance learning is to create an optimal at-home learning environment. So I come from a Montessori background. To give you the super brief snapshot, Maria Montessori was a physician who practiced at the turn of the 20th century, who basically invented modern education as we know it today. She created kid-sized furniture and materials at school and an entire philosophy based on the science of how children learn. One of the most fundamental tenets of her philosophy is the prepared environment. So what does the prepared environment have to do with distance learning? It means we have to stock the supplies. The prepared environment gives the child full access to every tool they might need for success. It's creating a mini classroom with open access to all the good stuff. Why? The philosophy is that if children have the materials they need to execute their essential work, the focus will be more directed to the work itself. And it's a simple enough concept, right? So here's how you can get started. First, gather your supplies. If we break this down, this becomes an age-dependent set of materials. You can start by referencing any supply lists that have been sent home from school. However, this is not essential to creating the most optimal list of supplies. You are very capable of creating this list on your own and most likely have many of these supplies already. I've created lists by age on my blog, and these might not be comprehensive, but they can definitely get you started if you're interested. So if you need help with making your own supply list, you can just pop onto the blog and find it. After you gather the supplies, next, it's time to configure the environment. So if you think about it, the environment we are in dictates the way we behave. For example, you would never yell across an art museum the same way you'd yell across a basketball court, right? And the way you behave in a library is much different than the way that you would behave at the zoo. So before COVID, home was home and school was school for most kids. And the challenge for us now as parents teaching our kids at home is going to be to create a school-like environment within our home. The simplest way forward is to pick a spot in your home that's going to be where school takes place every day. Make sure the supplies you've gathered are out on display and are totally accessible for your child. Once you have all the supplies you think you'll need, it's time to figure out where they're going to live. They need to be available and immediately accessible for your child at home. Do you have an extra bookshelf or an extra counter space? Maybe one of those small rolling carts with different drawers. If you could change the slide, I have a couple examples. And if you're into Pinterest, like this is like where you can have so much fun with this. So create a space where learning will feel fun and exciting for your child. Can go to the next one. You can get creative and use colors. And the next one. So This one I chose because they need to have access to all the supplies they need. However, you might not want all that junk out either. So if you pick something with drawers, it doesn't matter where it is, just that they have access. So, whatever your style is, if you don't want markers everywhere, like this is maybe a drawer situation is a better way to go. And another thing to keep in mind is you might want to do this where there's an outlet nearby. So the prepared environment is creating a new boundary in your home. It's essentially a new place. It's school at home. This area will create a different kind of order and balance for your child. It will give them more independence to learn. Children thrive when there's order and structure. So creating your school environment at home and giving kids access to all the tools they'll need will help set the tone for this new year of learning at home. Which brings me to step 2. Slide, please. Creating a morning routine. Next slide. Take a deep breath and think about a normal pre-quarantine school day. What did your morning look like? Chances are it looked pretty similar every day. Maybe you were the first one up, or you were able to have a cup of coffee before the kids were up. Maybe you have early risers who are consistently your alarm clock, and you started your day snuggling in bed. After that, in some kind of order, there were teeth that were brushed, lunches that were packed, breakfast that was eaten, clothes that were put on, faces washed, and maybe on special days there was kicking and screaming and tears too. And then there was the rush to get all the way out the door with the backpacks and the lunches and the shoes. And it honestly makes me tired to even remember this. But what you may or may not have noticed in the craziness of it all is that routine, that morning rhythm, was what set your kiddo up for the rest of their day of learning. It was the essential first step that set the tone and prepared your child to learn in the most optimal way. Now, think back to a typical quarantine school day. What did your schedule look like? I can't see most of you, but you might be laughing now. Did you follow a routine? Was there a ritual to the morning, or was it people trailing out of bed whenever they felt ready to get up? The easiest rhythm to fall into in an at-home learning environment is to stay super chill, keep the jammies on till 2, and chip away at the learning. And while this is definitely an option, if you make it the default, what can sometimes get lost is setting up that fundamental learning mindset. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. The ritual of getting ready sets up the day for success. And so even though learning is happening at home now, the morning routine is the essential first step to setting up readiness for the school day. Before quarantine, home was home, school was school, work was work, and home was our safe haven. It meant relaxing, it meant lower pressure, lower stakes. Home was our comfortable place to unwind after all the hard work was finished. And now, home has become everything to everyone. And for kids especially, the boundaries are super blurry. This means that we can't just expect them to snap into a learning mindset when we decide it's time to hit the books. Providing a morning routine to help create a ready mindset can greatly improve the outcomes of the day at home. One major bonus about this morning routine is that you don't employ it on the weekends or holidays or breaks. And by letting weekends be weekends and holidays be holidays, we reinforce our at-home learning boundaries even more. Letting kids sleep in and have a choice about their weekend mornings can be excellent incentive to get them through the week with something different and more relaxing to look forward to after the hard work is done. So how do you create a morning routine? This one's super easy. You just make a list of all the things you think you and your kiddo need to do in order to be ready to shift into a learning mode. A few things are essential. You need to wake up, you need to brush your teeth, you need to get dressed, you need to eat breakfast. And in addition, I suggest you consider adding something fun to this list. Maybe a morning walk around the block, or some time in the garden, or perhaps a song or a playlist that you listen to. By adding in something enjoyable, you add positivity and a more relaxed tone to the day. And also the transition between morning readiness routine and learning time will be signaled by this one activity that you perform over and over. This means that instead of you having to say over and over, after our walk, we get straight to work, your child will know that after your walk, you get straight to work. The activity triggers the transition. It's brilliant, right? So this brings me to our next step, which is creating the schedule. Slide, please. In my house, quarantine meant bedtime shifted later, which meant my kids needed to sleep later in order to be their best. And the great news is that this was not a problem. The brilliant thing about at-home learning is that you get to set the schedule. What matters is the routine and the structure you set up, whether it starts at 8 or 10 a.m., it doesn't matter. And this is where distance learning has an edge on school. You get to decide and you get to set the routines, the rituals, and the boundaries. There's a lot of freedom in this. So how do you create the most optimal schedule? This is going to be different for every family. My suggestion would be to think about your child's learning needs, bearing in mind their age and their ability to focus, and then build blocks of work time into the day. Slide, please. So it might look something like this. Morning routines, the first hour of the day, 8 to 9. Your school begins at 9 a.m., warm-up activity for 15 minutes, work time for an hour, take a 45-minute break, work time for an hour, maybe take a lunch break, and then work time for an hour, school ends. Now, this schedule would probably work for a little bit older kiddo, depending on their attention span, but regardless of how long you decide to schedule work time, keeping to the schedule creates the boundaries for everyone. I highly recommend posting the schedule on the wall and also having a clock visible so that kids can monitor what time it is and where they're at in the schedule at all times. For little ones, this is great practice for telling time. And for older kids, it provides structure and boundaries just like at school. For parents, you will now have the predictability of the schedule so that you can set up your day and your work calls around what's happening for school. Okay, so now before you start to get overwhelmed, I want to talk about the fourth step because it goes hand in hand with the schedule. Slide, please. Step 4 is the checklist. Now, let me take a step back and look at that schedule again. Next slide. So remember that work time slot? So this is the meat of the distance learning sandwich, if you will. This is where the learning happens. And the reality of distance learning is that during work time, a lot of kids will want, or maybe more than just some, will want more than just some hand-holding in order to get their work done. They're bright and curious kids, but they don't want to put pen to paper or sit with their assignment unless their parents are coaching them through every step of the way. As adults with their own set of responsibilities, sitting with their kids to walk them through simple steps they know how to make on their own during work time can be frustrating at best and sometimes downright excruciating. So how do we get kids to work independently during those work times? Slide, please. One of the best ways to help cultivate independence in kids is to use checklists. Checklists can be used in almost any circumstance, from morning routines to getting daily work accomplished. There is a power that comes from moving through a checklist and being able to tangibly see things disappearing from the to-do to done list. At my school, checklists are part of the daily routine. In the morning, the kids will have a group meeting with the teacher and will either receive a checklist from the teacher if they're younger, or will be prompted to create their own checklist if they're a bit older. From that point on in the day, the kids take responsibility for their own work and they keep track of what needs to be done with their own unique checklists, and they love it. There are so many reasons why checklists at home during distance learning can help cultivate independence. So first, checklists shift the power dynamic. It moves the responsibility from parent to child. Rather than you, the parent, being the gatekeeper of what is to be done for the school day, the checklist is the unbiased truth teller of what is still left to do. Second, checklists create a boundary and agenda for what the day will look like. The best advice I ever received was from my mom right before I had my first son. She said, kids want and need boundaries. After 14 years of teaching and 10 years as a mom, my experience leads me to believe there isn't a clearer truth. Kids want to know the boundaries. They want to know what to expect and what is expected of them. The checklist fulfills these needs. Third, another magical aspect of the checklist is that the tasks can always be broken up into smaller tasks if they're too large, too time-consuming, or just too overwhelming to achieve in one hack. This also provides another box to check off, which offers kids a sense of accomplishment when completed. Fourth, checklists teach time management. If you're keeping to a schedule, which I totally recommend, and you have work time designated from, let's say, 10 to 11, you can use the checklist as a motivator by saying, hey, I wonder if you could get 3 things checked off between now and our next break. Kids love checking things off the list. 5th, checklists establish autonomy and independence. They can refer to their own list at their own pace, and they do not really need extra input regarding expectations. If you have any experience working at home with your child in distance learning, this is a beautiful thing that gives you, the parent, more freedom too. Another place to try to use a checklist is in your morning routine. Write down the tasks that need to be accomplished with your child before school starts. Ask for input on what they think the tasks need to be, and then agree on the list. You can write the list on a whiteboard, chalkboard, or just a piece of paper and hand the list off to your child. This empowers kids during their morning routine, gives them a sense of control over aspects of the day, and also accomplishes necessary tasks, which is a win-win-win. Next slide, please. The 5th and final step is the charter. Next slide, please. Sorry, not that kind of charter. Although, wouldn't that be great if we could all just get on a boat and go to the Caribbean right now? Okay, next slide. This kind of charter, an agreement. Okay, so one of the #1 things parents have been struggling with at home is getting their kids to buy into distance learning. So what do I mean by buy-in? So Merriam-Webster defines buy-in as acceptance of and willingness to actively support and participate in something. So buy-in to distance learning means you have a ready, willing, and supportive participant. Does this sound like your kiddo? Maybe not yet. Last spring, parent after parent told me that they could not get their child to willingly and actively participate in the day-to-day grind of at-home learning. They missed their friends, they were disenchanted with the large group Zoom calls, and they would create any excuse to not do their work. Despite parents' best efforts, this often led to a power struggle that led to their child completely stalling out, unwilling or unable to do anything but stare at their work or out the window for long stretches at a time. And to be fair, we asked a lot of kids when we transitioned to learning at home. Their sanctuary was invaded by work. Their place of refuge turned into their learning zone. The difference in place and expectation was so vast, it is no wonder students struggled to adapt. But we have an advantage right now because we know distance learning is coming this fall, which means we have time to create new boundaries, expectations, and buy-in with our kids. So this is how I do this at school. Every year, on the first day of school, we have a community meeting. And the rules of the meeting are that everybody gets a chance to share their ideas and that we listen well to each other. In this meeting, I ask kids, how do you want to feel at school? The answers are usually along the lines of happy, safe, excited, ready, not bored, heard. We generate as many ideas as possible, and I have a scribe keep track of it on the whiteboard. After we fill the board, I ask the next question. What actions can we take to feel this way every day? The amazing thing about this question is that the kids know exactly what actions to take to feel this way. Answers I've received have been along the lines of get a good night's sleep, eat breakfast, keep up with my homework, use my time in class to get the work done quickly, be a good friend, be a good listener, be friendly, smile. Never be fooled. The kids know how to do things. They know how they want to feel, and they understand what actions create those feelings. So how does this translate to home? I'm sure at this point I'm only connecting the dots and you're already envisioning your conversation with your kiddo. But to get you started, I would begin by saying you would like to have a school meeting with your kid and schedule a time. This might be met with some skepticism, but just explain that school meetings are a special time you're going to set aside throughout the year to really focus on school and how it's going to work at home. When you get to the actual meeting, which I highly recommend you hold in your prepared environment, even if it's not completely set up yet, you can start the conversation about school. Choose which one of you wants to be the scribe and ask your child the same questions I ask my students. How do you want to feel learning at home this year? What actions can we take to feel this way every day? Generate your ideas and make a simple list together. Now, the final step is to make it official. Once the list is created, you can write the actual charter. This charter or agreement condenses the list of how we want to feel and the actions we're going to take to feel this way into a paragraph or so. This paragraph can be super fun to write, and you may want to play with using legal or even old-fashioned language like hear ye, the below signed participants, blah, blah, blah. Word the charter to reflect all of the values and actions you think will set everyone up for success. After the charter is drafted, you can print it and all parties can sign. Sometimes I have the kids decorate it and then we post it on the wall in a central spot for reference, because when things go off the rails, this is the touch point you can always return to. This simple meeting and charter sets up the agreement between the teacher and the student, which is you and your child now. It is a starting point and usually comes with a rush of energy and excitement for what is to come. It also continues to serve as a reference point for when challenges arise. Slide, please. So those are the first 5 steps, and I hope this is helpful for you. But before I open this up for questions, I just want to say that I know that this can all feel very overwhelming and that we're all being asked to stretch ourselves in ways we've never even dreamed of before COVID. You've probably never taught before, but you are and have always been your child's primary teacher. This year is going to be full of new challenges, but also of new delights. Teaching is in essence a creative endeavor. You will find what works for your family. And when things go off the rails, and they will, just like they do in all teachers' classrooms, take a deep breath, take your kids outside, or even better, to the zoo, and know there are hundreds of thousands of parents who are in this in solidarity. Feel the love and support. And if you'd like, you can follow along with my blog for ongoing ideas and resources to get you through. I think that's it, B. There you go.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I think now is some time for Q&A. You can either unmute yourselves to talk to the whole entire area, or you could use the chat box function as well. But that was very informative, so thank you.
Thank you.
I think I see one question, Jeremy. Do you want to read it or do you want me to read it?
The one from Kristen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so suggestions for including a younger, not school-age child when you're focusing on the older one.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think that so what's so hard about that is that children have such different attention spans at different age levels. But with the younger kids, I would just say if you're able to come up with a schedule that makes sense, you can try to build into that work time works for your younger child too. So you can set this up. You set up the expectation, like you might have, blocks or dolls, or three different. You can do a prepared environment for a younger child too that has different kinds of materials, or what we call in Montessori works, that the kids are going to do at whatever age level. And so during that schedule, during the work time, all kids are able to say, or to understand, this is work time and these are your choices during work time. So, and try to make those materials are their prepared environment. They're different kinds of materials than like glue and pencils and paper and things like that. But the younger children need works too. And so maybe it's like puzzles or, things that they can do independently and get engaged with that are at their level, that can hold their attention during that work time. That would be a place to start.
Fantastic. Yeah, someone else second that as well, so it's perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions that might have popped up?
Hi, Tara. I've got a question.
Hi. Go ahead. Uh-oh.
So
I can't hear anything.
No.
Sorry. Okay. So, okay.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, sorry. So my son is 9.5, and he's very bright, got a lot going on inside his head. But oftentimes that means that when he starts thinking, he stops paying attention to what's in front of him. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So, I love the checklist. During spring learning at home, I was in charge of the checklist. I like your idea of handing off the checklist, but have you got any ideas for, the staring out the window or, engaging without me sitting there going, now do the next math problem. Now do the next math problem.
Right. Okay, so something that can be motivating is actually using a timer for tasks. So this can go with the checklist, right? So if the task is the math and you have 10 math problems, if you set a timer, and at our school, we actually use like those egg timers, the ones that you can spin and they sit right in front of you, which is actually like a really good motivator because you can like see it moving back. But sometimes using a timer can be, along with the checklist, can be really motivating because it becomes more of a game and it becomes more of like, can I do this? It's a challenge. And it's just something different than like, I have to get through these next 10 problems. I'm never going to do this. So I don't know if you've tried timers before, but we have a lot of success with that at school with kids who are feeling like undermotivated. So it might be something that you could try.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Also, Kristen just in the chat box gave some a good little link you could use for younger kids. So that's good. Thanks for sharing that, Kristen. Cool. I think maybe another minute or two. If nothing pops up, I think I want to definitely thank you, Tara. It was very informative. This has been recorded as well, so we could definitely send this around to make sure you want to kind of go back and take a look at this or share on to other people who might find this very informative. But yeah, I think we'll another wait a minute or two. I think we'll be good to go.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you so
Bye, everyone.
much,
Thank you
Tara.
for being
We
here.
really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to stop the recording now.